Everything that irritates us about others can lead us to an understanding of ourselves. Carl Jung wrote this not to sound poetic, but to remind us that what we call anger is rarely about the other person. It is usually a mirror reflecting something within us that we have not yet faced. When people talk about staying calm, they often reduce it to shallow advice about breathing techniques or walking away. While these may help in the moment, they do not explain why certain people can unsettle us so deeply. The real question is not how to control anger, but why we allow another person's words or actions to reach so far inside us. Psychology shows that we react strongly when something touches our hidden wounds. If a comment embarrasses us, it usually touches a place where we already feel insecure. If someone's arrogance annoys us, it often mirrors arrogance we deny in ourselves. Anger becomes a signal pointing to what we have not mastered in our own psyche. Most of the people you meet act from habit, from old wounds, or from unconscious patterns. Expecting them to act with clarity is like expecting a storm to stay still. What you can control is your own awareness. The more you see these patterns, the less power they have over you. To never be bothered is not about hardening yourself, but about understanding yourself so deeply that no one's behavior can shake the ground you stand on. Let's dive in and explore. And number 1, recognize that every time you feel anger, it is not the person in front of you, but your own shadow reacting. People trigger what already lives inside you. When Carl Jung spoke about the shadow, he was not describing something mystical. He meant the hidden part of ourselves that we would rather not admit exists. The selfishness, envy, insecurity, pride, or fear that we deny in the daylight gets buried, yet it does not disappear. Instead, it waits for the perfect moment to show itself, usually when someone else stirs it up. This is why anger feels so sudden and overwhelming. We think the cause is outside us, but in truth, the match was struck on something dry that was already waiting to burn inside. Imagine someone calls you lazy. If laziness is something you are comfortable with or have already accepted, their words bounce off without much weight. But if laziness is something you secretly fear in yourself, then those words will pierce like a dagger. The person in front of you only pressed the button. The anger comes from the machinery of your own shadow that has been wired long before. Philosophy has always warned us that we suffer less from reality and more from our interpretation of reality. The Stoics taught that people do not disturb us. Our judgments about their actions do. Jung refined this by showing that our judgments are shaped by the unconscious shadow. When you explode at someone, you are not just meeting them. You are colliding with the parts of yourself you never learned to embrace. The practical truth is this: to be free from anger, you must first become intimate with your shadow. Study the emotions that rise within you, especially the ones that feel unreasonable. Instead of asking why people upset you, ask what they awaken in you. Every irritation is a clue. Every burst of anger is a mirror. Once you see that, the world outside becomes less threatening. The one who knows his shadow cannot be controlled by others. He recognizes provocation not as an attack, but as a reminder of what is still unresolved inside. That shift alone can turn an insult into a teacher and a trigger into an opportunity for deeper self-knowledge. Number 2, most people do not truly see you. They project their own wounds and insecurities onto you. If you understand projection, you stop taking anything personally. Projection is one of Carl Jung's most important ideas, and it is also one of the hardest to swallow. Most of what people think about you has very little to do with you. It has everything to do with them. When someone looks at you, they are not seeing the full person you are. They are filtering you through the lens of their past, their pain, and their insecurities. Think about it. A child who grew up with a critical parent often projects criticism onto others, even when none exists. A man insecure about his intelligence might accuse others of being arrogant just because he feels small next to them. A woman who was betrayed might constantly suspect dishonesty in people who are actually trustworthy. These are not observations of reality. They are projections of wounds. Now, imagine you become the target of such projection. Someone accuses you of being selfish when all you did was set a boundary. Someone calls you arrogant because you spoke with confidence. Someone assumes you're untrustworthy because of a story in their own mind. If you take it personally, you will carry the weight of their wound as if it were your own. But if you understand projection, you will see their words not as a mirror of who you are, but as a window into who they are. Philosophy has touched on this long before psychology. Marcus Aurelius reminded himself daily that the people he meets are shaped by their own beliefs and struggles, not by truth itself. Jung took this further by showing that our unconscious needs a place to unload, and often that place is another person. We see in others what we cannot accept in ourselves. Here is the practical freedom. When you realize people project, their attacks lose their sting. You stop wasting energy trying to defend yourself against distortions. You learn to stand calmly, knowing the storm in front of you is not about you. The one who understands projection walks through life with a shield that no insult can pierce. He knows that most voices are echoes of old pain, and you cannot be bothered by an echo once you see it for what it truly is. Number 3. You cannot control how people act, but you can decide whether to identify with their behavior or observe it like a passing storm. One of the deepest causes of anger is the illusion of control. We secretly believe that people should behave in ways that match our expectations. We think they should be polite, fair, considerate, or rational. But reality rarely bends to our expectations. People will gossip, insult, lie, betray, or misunderstand you. If your peace depends on others acting the way you want, then your peace will always be fragile. Carl Jung often emphasized the importance of detachment. Not detachment in the sense of cold indifference, but in the sense of observing without becoming entangled. Imagine a storm. If you are caught in the middle, you are battered by wind and rain, unable to see clearly. But if you watch the storm from a safe place, you can witness its force without being destroyed by it. The same applies to human behavior. Think of a workplace scenario. A colleague constantly interrupts you in meetings. If you identify with their behavior, you might tell yourself a story that they do not respect you, that they are trying to belittle you, that you must defend yourself. This story fuels your anger. But if you step back and observe, you may see that their interruptions say more about their insecurity or need for attention than about you. You witness the storm but do not step into it. Philosophers like Epictetus built entire systems around this insight. He taught that we cannot control what others do, only our response. Jung agreed, but he added that when we react, we often do so because our own complexes are triggered. The key is to observe the impulse before it takes hold. In practice, this means training yourself to pause. When provoked, instead of immediately reacting, you silently ask, do I need to own this, or can I let it pass? Most of the time, the answer will be that it belongs to them, not to you. Freedom begins when you stop trying to manage the behavior of others and start managing your own identification with it. The more you watch like an observer, the less you burn with anger. People become like weather, unpredictable, sometimes unpleasant, but never personal. Number 4, ask yourself in moments of irritation, what part of me is being touched? If you can name the wound, the person loses power over you. When irritation rises, the instinct is to look outward. We think, that person is rude or they disrespected me. But if we pause long enough to look inward, we often find that what hurts is not their action itself, but the wound it touches inside us. Jung's psychology teaches that we all carry complexes, clusters of memories, emotions, and beliefs formed in childhood or through painful experiences. These complexes remain buried until someone presses against them. Then, in an instant, we feel anger or shame explode from within. Imagine a simple example. At work, your boss comments, "You could have done better on this project." For some, these words roll off without much weight. But for another person, they ignite a storm of anger and humiliation. Why? Because long ago, perhaps as a child, this person was told repeatedly that they were never good enough. The comment tapped directly into that old wound. The boss became the trigger, but the real pain was already waiting inside. This is why asking, "What part of me is being touched?" is so powerful. It shifts the focus from the outer world to the inner one. Instead of wrestling with the other person, you turn to face your own psyche. By naming the wound, whether it is insecurity, fear of failure, fear of rejection, you bring it into consciousness. And once it is conscious, it loses its grip. Philosophers have long pointed out that self-knowledge is the foundation of freedom. Socrates insisted that the unexamined life is not worth living. Jung sharpened this by showing that without examining our triggers, we remain slaves to them. The person who knows their wounds cannot be easily manipulated because insults and provocations no longer strike blindly. Here is the practical magic. The next time you feel that flush of irritation, resist the urge to react. Instead, silently ask, what exactly did this touch in me? You may discover it is not about the present at all. It is about old echoes you have carried for years. Once you see that clearly, the one who provoked you shrinks back into perspective. The truth is simple but hard. People do not make us angry. They only awaken what we have not healed. To name the wound is to reclaim power. Number 5. The majority of people you meet are unconscious. They act out their complexes without awareness. Expecting awareness from the unaware is like expecting silence from thunder. One of Carl Jung's boldest truths is that most people are not truly conscious of their behavior. They are driven by hidden forces, old fears, unhealed wounds, and ingrained habits. What we call personality is often a pattern of reactions repeating themselves without awareness. When you understand this, the way you view human conflict changes completely. Think about how often you hear someone say, "I didn't mean to snap, I just lost it," or, "I don't know why I keep choosing the wrong people." These are admissions that the unconscious is at work. Jung described the unconscious as a vast reservoir, much larger than our conscious mind, filled with complexes. A complex is like a knot in the psyche, formed from childhood experiences, trauma, or repeated pain. When triggered, it takes control, and the person acts without clarity, almost like a puppet pulled by invisible strings. Now here is the crucial part. If most people are unconscious, then expecting them to act with self-awareness is a setup for constant frustration. It is like demanding a storm to be quiet or a wave to stop moving. When your friend lies, when a colleague gossips, when a stranger insults you, they are not always choosing deliberately. More often, they are acting out their complexes. They are speaking from wounds, from fears, from old voices they never learned to silence. Imagine a scenario. You are at a family gathering and an uncle makes a cruel remark about your career. It feels personal, but step back and you may see that he has spent his life trapped in resentment about his own failures. His words are not about you at all. They are the unconscious spilling itself out, like thunder rolling across the sky. Would you get angry at thunder? No. You accept it as the nature of storms. Philosophy and psychology both point here. The Stoics taught that anger fades when you see human beings as acting according to their nature. Jung added depth by showing that this nature is largely unconscious. The practical lesson is simple but powerful. Stop demanding consciousness from the unconscious. When you do, irritation dissolves. You see people not as enemies but as sleepwalkers, acting out patterns they do not yet understand. Your role is not to fight them, but to remain awake yourself. Number 6. Anger only thrives when you secretly believe you need the other person's approval. Once you are rooted in your own value, no insult can wound you. At the core of most anger lies a hidden need, the need to be validated. When someone disrespects us, mocks us, or dismisses us, the sting comes not only from their words but from the fear that what they said might be true. This fear is born from insecurity, and insecurity is born from dependence on others for a sense of worth. Carl Jung often reminded us that true freedom comes from individuation, the process of becoming who you are apart from collective opinion. When your identity depends on the shifting approval of others, you live in a fragile state. Every insult feels like a crack in your foundation. But once you know your value from within, insults become hollow noises. Consider a scenario. You attend a social gathering and someone sneers at your career choice, calling it unambitious. If deep down you question your own path, their words will ignite anger because they echo your private doubts. But if you are grounded in your choice, if you truly believe in the worth of what you do, their sneer carries no weight. It is like trying to stab water, it leaves no wound. Philosophy echoes this lesson. The Stoics taught that no man is harmed by insult unless he consents to believe it. Modern psychology supports this as well. Studies show that individuals with high self-esteem are less reactive to criticism. They process it as feedback rather than attack. This reveals an uncomfortable truth. Most of our anger is not against others, but against ourselves. We rage because someone touched a place where we secretly crave affirmation. Once we break that dependence, the anger dissolves. Jung would say that this requires shadow work, facing the parts of ourselves we doubt, the parts we seek to cover with other people's praise. Once you bring those doubts into the light and accept them, no one else's words can destabilize you. The practical application is clear. Instead of asking, "How do I stop people from offending me?" ask, "Where am I still seeking permission to exist as I am?" The day you no longer need that permission, the world loses its power to anger you. Number 7. Most conflicts are two shadows colliding. If you can hold your ground without letting your shadow take over, the other will be left wrestling with themselves. When two people clash, it rarely happens between their conscious, reasonable selves. More often, it is their shadows, the hidden, unacknowledged parts of their psyche, slamming into each other. Each person projects what they dislike about themselves onto the other, and the fight becomes a mirror hall of insecurities. Carl Jung described the shadow as the storehouse of everything we repress. Pride, envy, rage, insecurity, fear of failure, all of it hides there. When someone triggers us, our shadow leaps forward, demanding to defend itself. When their shadow meets ours, the conflict becomes not two people disagreeing, but two unconscious forces colliding. Picture a simple argument between two friends. One criticizes the other for being irresponsible. The criticized friend explodes with anger. On the surface, this looks like a debate about behavior. But at a deeper level, one friend may be projecting his own fear of irresponsibility onto the other, while the second friend's shadow, full of insecurity about being unreliable, rushes to defend. What we witness is not rational dialogue, but shadows battling for dominance. Philosophers have seen this dynamic for centuries. Nietzsche once wrote that when you stare into the abyss stares back. The abyss in this case is the shadow of another person, which awakens your own. Here is where self-mastery comes in. If you recognize when your shadow is rising, you can pause. You can choose not to let it speak for you. This does not mean suppressing it. It means observing it like an actor waiting off stage. You see the impulse, but you do not let it take the microphone. When you do this, something interesting happens. The other person is left wrestling with their own shadow alone. Without your reactive energy to feed on, their anger often collapses into silence or reveals itself for what it is, a projection of their own inner struggles. The practical truth is this: every argument is an invitation for your shadow to come out and play. If you accept the invitation, you lose yourself in the chaos. If you decline, if you stay grounded in awareness, the storm burns itself out. To master conflict, you do not need to conquer others. You need to know your own shadow well enough that it cannot hijack you in the heat of the moment. That is the kind of power that cannot be provoked. Number 8. When someone provokes you, see them as a mirror showing what you have not yet mastered within. The greater the irritation, the greater the lesson. Carl Jung often reminded us that other people are not just companions in life, they are mirrors. They reflect back to us the parts of ourselves that remain hidden, unrefined, or wounded. When irritation flares, it is a signal that we have stumbled upon a reflection of something unresolved within. Think about this in daily life. Suppose you meet someone who constantly boasts. Their arrogance grates on your nerves, and you feel anger rising every time they speak. The question is, why? If arrogance had no place in your psyche, it would not bother you so much. But perhaps you repress your own need for recognition. Maybe you were raised to believe that wanting attention is shameful, so you buried that desire deep inside. When you meet the braggart, your hidden hunger for acknowledgement surfaces, and the irritation burns. The mirror has done its job, whether you like it or not. This is the uncomfortable genius of human relationships. They expose us. Every irritation is a teacher, every provocation a lesson waiting to be seen. Jung argued that we cannot grow without confronting our projections. The people who bother us the most often hold the exact traits we deny in ourselves. Philosophers hinted at this long before psychology. Schopenhauer observed that we rarely hate in others what does not exist in some form within us. It is as if life designed relationships to serve as constant feedback loops, forcing us to face what we would otherwise ignore. Consider another example. You are disturbed by someone's laziness. It fills you with contempt. On closer reflection, perhaps it is not their laziness that truly bothers you, but your own fear of being unproductive, of wasting your potential. Their behavior touches a place you police within yourself, so your irritation is really directed at your own shadow. The practical wisdom here is simple but difficult to practice. When provoked, do not rush to judge the other person. Instead, ask, what is this showing me about myself? If the irritation is strong, the lesson is strong. Life uses people as mirrors to point us toward unfinished work in the psyche. The irony is that the people you resent most may actually be your greatest teachers. They force you to confront the parts of yourself you would rather leave unseen. And if you can learn to read the mirror instead of smashing it, you gain a form of power that cannot be disturbed. Number 9. Your nervous system is trained by repetition. If you continually feed irritation with reaction, anger becomes your default. If you continually feed irritation with awareness, calm becomes your default. Anger is not only a psychological phenomenon, it is also biological. Each time you react with irritation, your nervous system records that reaction like a groove carved deeper into stone. Neurons that fire together wire together. This is why people who are easily angered tend to stay that way. Their brain and body have rehearsed the anger response so often that it becomes their natural setting. Carl Jung saw the psyche as both a biological and symbolic system. Complexes live in the unconscious, but they also attach themselves to the body. When triggered, they flood us with energy, heart racing, muscles tightening, face heating. These bodily signals make us believe the reaction is unavoidable. But the truth is, the reaction is learned. And what is learned can be unlearned. Imagine someone cuts you off in traffic. You explode in rage, slam your horn, curse under your breath. The next time it happens, the body remembers the previous storm and fires it up more quickly. Soon, every minor inconvenience on the road ignites the same reaction. Your nervous system has been trained to feed irritation with anger. But now imagine the opposite. The car cuts you off, and instead of exploding, you notice your impulse rising. You take a deep breath, observe the trigger, and choose not to react. The nervous system records this too. The next time it happens, the urge is weaker. Slowly, the groove shifts. You are teaching your body that awareness, not fury, is the appropriate response. Philosophy has long understood this principle. Aristotle taught that virtues are habits. We become calm by practicing calm, just as we become courageous by practicing courage. Modern neuroscience confirms this with the concept of neuroplasticity, the brain's ability to rewire itself through repetition. The practical truth is that your nervous system is always being trained, whether you are conscious of it or not. Every time you indulge anger, you strengthen anger. Every time you choose awareness, you strengthen awareness. This is liberating because it means you are never trapped. No matter how reactive you have been in the past, you can retrain your system. The key is consistency. Over time, calm becomes not an effort, but your new default. The world does not change, you do. And when you change, the provocations of others lose their grip on you. Number 10. The one who irritates you the most often teaches you the most about yourself. The lesson is hidden inside the discomfort. It is easy to admire teachers who inspire us, but the most powerful teachers are often the ones we resist. Carl Jung would say that the people who irritate us most are not accidents. They arrive in our lives as mirrors, forcing us to confront what we would rather avoid. The sharper the irritation, the greater the lesson. Think about someone who constantly talks over you in conversations. Your irritation rises and you feel dismissed. At first glance, it seems obvious. They are the problem. But if you sit with the discomfort, you might see more. Perhaps your anger is not only about their behavior, but about your difficulty asserting your voice. Maybe you grew up in an environment where speaking up was discouraged. The interrupter exposes this old wound and forces you to confront the fact that you still hesitate to claim your place. The irritation becomes a spotlight on your unfinished work. This is why Jung considered conflict essential to growth. Without discomfort, the shadow remains hidden. But when someone provokes us, the shadow rises into the light. The enemy becomes the teacher. Philosophers hinted at this long before modern psychology. Seneca wrote that adversity reveals who we are, and sometimes that adversity takes the form of people. They push us not out of kindness, but through their flaws and unconsciousness. In doing so, they awaken the very parts of us that need strengthening. Here is another example. Imagine you despise arrogance in others. It fills you with anger. On reflection, perhaps the deeper lesson is that you have disowned your own need for confidence. You fear being perceived as arrogant, so you bury your assertiveness. When someone embodies arrogance, they awaken this buried energy, and irritation flares. If you accept the lesson, you can reclaim confidence without falling into arrogance. The discomfort is the doorway. Most people try to shut the door by avoiding or attacking those who irritate them. But if you walk through the door, you uncover new parts of yourself. You see that the real battle is not with the other person, but with the parts of you waiting to be acknowledged. So, the next time someone irritates you beyond reason, pause. Ask not, why are they like this? But why does this bother me so much? That question turns irritation into wisdom, and the one you thought was your enemy becomes your most necessary teacher. Number 11. There is freedom in realizing that not everyone deserves access to your inner world. Most voices should remain at the door and never be let inside. One of the greatest mistakes people make is assuming that everyone's opinion should matter. We hand out access to our inner world as if it were public property, then feel wounded when careless words slip inside and cause damage. Carl Jung would argue that part of individuation, becoming your true self, is learning to build proper boundaries. Not walls of bitterness, but gates of discernment. Think of your mind as a home. Not every visitor deserves a seat at your table. Some are guests of honor, people who have earned the right to speak into your life. Others are strangers whose words should remain at the doorstep, and some are intruders who must be firmly shut out. The problem is that many of us let everyone wander freely through our house, leaving footprints and breaking furniture. We confuse openness with wisdom. Take a scenario. You decide to pursue a creative project. A friend dismisses it as a waste of time. If you grant them access to your inner world, their words can linger, feeding self-doubt and anger. But if you recognize that their voice does not deserve entry, the irritation dissolves. Their opinion stays outside, where it belongs. Philosophers understood this principle well. Epictetus taught that we are harmed not by what others say, but by our decision to let their words matter. Jung gave this more depth by showing that some people project their unhealed wounds onto us. If we allow those projections inside, we begin to carry burdens that were never ours to carry. This is not about arrogance or coldness. It is about protecting the sacred ground of your psyche. Just as you would not leave your front door wide open to every passer-by, you must not leave your inner world unguarded. Not every criticism deserves a reply. Not every insult deserves attention. The freedom lies in choosing who has access. When you limit that access to the few who know you deeply and wish you well, the noise of the crowd loses power. Their voices echo outside, faint and harmless. Inside, your peace remains untouched. The truth is, irritation often comes from granting unworthy voices too much weight. Once you realize most people should remain at the door, you stop being bothered by them. You listen selectively, and in that selectivity, you find calm. Number 12. You do not rise above anger by suppression. You rise above it by giving it a name, seeing its roots, and then choosing not to feed it. Many people believe the best way to deal with anger is to push it down, to swallow it, to pretend it does not exist. They clench their teeth, force a smile, and call it self-control. But Carl Jung warned that what we suppress does not disappear. It sinks into the unconscious, where it grows stronger and waits for its moment to erupt. Suppression is not mastery, it is delayed explosion. Imagine a workplace scenario. Your manager constantly interrupts you, and you feel frustration rising. Instead of acknowledging it, you suppress it day after day, convincing yourself that silence is strength. But the irritation accumulates like steam in a sealed container. Eventually, one small incident, a misplaced email, a sarcastic comment, triggers an eruption far out of proportion to the moment. This is the cost of suppression. True freedom comes not from burying anger, but from naming it. When irritation rises, pause and label it clearly. I feel disrespected. I feel unseen. I feel rejected. By naming the emotion, you drag it out of the shadow into the light of consciousness. Neuroscience supports this. Studies show that labeling emotions calms the amygdala, the brain's alarm center, and activates regions linked to self-control. Once you name it, the next step is to trace its root. Ask, where does this come from? Often, you discover the anger has less to do with the present situation and more to do with old wounds. A colleague's criticism may sting because it echoes the voice of a parent who never believed in you. A partner's silence may feel unbearable because it reawakens a childhood fear of abandonment. Seeing the root breaks the illusion that the current person holds all the power. Finally, you must choose. Anger is like a fire. It can burn you if you feed it with reaction, but it can also fade if you stop adding fuel. When you have named it and seen its root, you can decide not to give it energy. This is not suppression, but conscious disengagement. Philosophers like Marcus Aurelius practice this daily, reminding themselves that emotions lose power when examined. Jung deepened it by showing that awareness transforms the raw energy of anger into insight. The practical truth is this: you rise above anger not by chaining it in the basement, but by shining a light on it. Once you see it clearly, it shrinks. And when it shrinks, the people who once provoked you lose their hold. Finally, anger is often mistaken for strength, but in truth, it is a confession of weakness. It reveals the places where we are still wounded, where we have given away our power to the words or actions of another. To live above anger does not mean to harden into stone or to pretend nothing touches us. It means to know ourselves so deeply that nothing outside can shake us from within. Carl Jung taught that what irritates us in others is a mirror of what lies unresolved in ourselves. To never be bothered is not about silencing the world, but about understanding the reflection it offers. The arrogant colleague, the careless friend, the hostile stranger, each is a teacher pointing back to the unfinished business of our own psyche. Freedom comes when we see clearly. When you realize that most people are trapped in their cycles, you stop expecting them to act otherwise. When you remember that their anger is often aimed at ghosts, you stop taking it personally. When you guard your inner world, only letting in the voices that matter, you stop bleeding from every careless word. Philosophers from Epictetus to Marcus Aurelius and psychologists like Jung all converge on the same truth. Peace is not found in controlling others, but in mastering the self. The storms outside may rage, but when the center within you is calm, nothing can disturb it. The ultimate mastery is not to fight anger, but to outgrow it, to reach a place where you see through it, understand it, and then quietly let it go. That is when no one and nothing has the power to bother you anymore. Thank you for watching.